Coil build vase. Okay, let's go. Okay, so I'm opening up a box here because I need a piece of cardboard. I need something to be able to create a template. And I like having something a little bit more rigid rather than just paper. Something that's going to be able to hold its form a bit. And what I do is I fold it in half somewhere, and then I cut that piece out. So I have a piece that's folded in half like I'm starting to make a paper airplane or something like that. And then I need to be able to have it tall enough that I'm able to create a template that's at least 10 inches tall. Now I'll go through and I figure out, after all my sketching, which one I actually want to create. Now, what I want to do is I want to draw that out the best that I can, centered, so I'm drawing both sides of it. And what I'm trying to do here is see the whole thing as I draw it out. It might change a little bit from my original sketch when I start creating it larger like this. But in the end, I'm going to look at it, and it's not going to be even. I'm going to look at both sides and decide which side is my best side, and that's the side I'm going to cut out. Now, since it's folded in half, it's actually cutting both sides out at the same time, but this way I get my best side. Open it up and I see that's what it's going to look like. I have my template all ready to go. Now it's time to start working. So start with a little pinch pot. When I do this, I'm trying to get the pinch pot that's going to be able to create the bottom of this vase. And so as I do this, I can lay it out there and keep checking it against the negative space template I have. That's one that has a hole in it, so to speak. Now as I'm doing this, I'm realizing that I want the bottom to have a little bit more of a foot. Well, I can add that later, so I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to imagine it without the foot. Now it's time to start working out coils. We have a coil built pot, but it started with a little pinch pot base. This time you want to roll out your coils a little bit thicker than you did for the first coil proficiency test. These might be up to as thick as your pinky. Now I flatten mine out after I do it. That makes them go a little bit taller. It makes it go a little faster too. So as I go taller, I keep going up, and then I'll get to my base. Now as I do it, I go one time around and I need to cut off the extra stuff. As you do this, there's a spot that you do want to join together. So I like to score and slip the two spots that get put together right here. I don't want that coming apart later. Now I'm not going to score and slip everything I do because the clay I'm using is pretty soft. If it's pretty soft and I plan on smoothing it all in on the inside and the outside, I should be okay. If you're on the side of your clay being a little bit dry, you definitely want to score and slip just to make sure. But right now, I think I'm alright. I made a little plate to put my clay on, so I'm able to set it down on the table without it sticking so much. Now as I'm going along and I keep smearing the outside the same way that we did the inside on the visible coil bowl, then I go to the inside, the same thing. It's important I put my hand behind the bowl when I'm smearing the inside, because if I don't, I'm probably going to stretch it out and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's way off from what I was going for. If you have any large cracks like I did right there, put a little bit of slip in there, rub it in, and then continue to smooth it together. We don't want any gaps in there that never work out for us. So as I keep going, I just keep doing coil after coil. Each time, if I do the coil, the ring, a little bit bigger than the one before it, it's going to be a little bit larger. So it sticks out more, you could say. So my bowl is more like a bowl instead of like a straight up base. When I looked at my shape, it starts out by being a little bit skinny, gets a little bit wider, gets a little bit wider, and then eventually it'll start getting skinnier. But as you can see here, it just looks like I'm making a bowl, smoothing out the inside and smoothing out the outside. It's important to do this as you go. For one, you aren't going to be able to do the inside very well once it gets to be too tall. So you want to do it while you can still reach in there and take care of it. So if you don't smooth out the inside now, good luck later. But I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the outside and inside are looking good, and see how I keep laying it inside of the form to see if I'm on my way. Now I realize that I have a problem there about the foot, that it's never going to look right until I get the foot on there. So I think I'm just going to cut my template, just cut that bottom almost an inch off, so that I'll add that on there later and add the foot on at the end. So I'm going to keep going now and keep building, and I keep doing coil after coil. I build one layer after another layer. Here's a spot where I felt the clay was a little bit on the dry side, so I did score it, and I did slip. So I used the little comb tool, very quick way to score it, and then put the slip on there. Now when you rub it together at first, it's a little tricky at first, especially when you have the slip on your fingers. It eventually starts getting sticky enough. I always keep in mind a wall. There it is again. I have my hand cupping the outside of it so it's acting like a wall. So when I press my clay, think of it like a rubber band. You can stretch it out and it's going to come back. But the thing about the clay is it'll stretch out and it won't come back. So always be aware, it's very difficult to make it come back in if you stretch it out too much. So try not to stretch it out. I'd rather have you stay on the side of it being a little bit too skinny. You can always make it a little bit wider later. Now as I'm going along, remember great coil building skills If you have one that gets too skinny in a spot, don't use it. Just smush it back up again and make a new piece. You might be able to make a huge long piece like this if you have the room and you have enough clay in your hand. If you do that, go ahead and cut one coil off of it, leave the rest for the next step, and just keep going. I keep adding more clay, smooth it out, smooth it out, smooth it out. And again, it takes time, absolutely. This is the time that you're actually making it look good now instead of like trying to make it all look good at the end. You're really trying to get that smoothness down. For one thing, you want it to stay together. And if you don't smooth this together in this coil building, it's just likely to start coming apart. So I want to smooth it out really well, and then I want to make sure that it looks good too. So that's where I'm continuing to go at it. I'm using mostly my hands as a tool. Sometimes add a little bit of water or a little bit of slip. But a lot of times I'm just simply just going along. If the clay is soft enough, just pulling it down. Like right here, it just doesn't work if there's too much slip getting in the way. Too slippery, you need it to actually be a bit more on the sticky side, so when I pull it down, it actually pulls clay with it, and it's going to fuse them together to become one piece of clay. Now sometimes you pull the coil down and you have to fix up a lot of the other parts because you're adding extra clay everywhere, but don't take any shortcuts here. Keep going, keep making it look as good as you can. Now, so far, this vase of mine, I have it getting a little bit wider on its way up. I'm getting to the point where soon I'll need to change directions and have it start coming in. But so far, I'm going to keep going up and slightly out. Keep in mind the slight part. Again, it is much easier to make it get wider than it is to have it get skinnier later on. So you want to make sure that you are going straight up or slightly out if you want it to come out. And be very aware every time you push your clay, you're stretching it, and stretching clay can make it get out of control if you do too much. So pay attention. Pay attention to what you're doing. Let this be a time that you're really aware of what you're up to. Continue scoring, slipping, making your coils, joining your coils, smearing them together, smearing them together. And it's this process that you get better and better at, and what a great way to get to know what the clay can do. Just hands-on, moving it around, seeing how flexible it is, how much it can do what you're asking it to do. Hopefully you're getting really quite a bit better at making your coils. As you go along, again, I'm flattening mine out a little bit so they're a little bit taller. So every time I do a layer, it goes a little bit taller. And that works pretty well for these early stages. When you're making some major changes in direction, you definitely don't want to do the tall coils for that. So if you want to all of a sudden have it go inward or go outward a little bit more severely, you're going to want more of circular coils. You don't want them to be tall like that. So smaller can be better if you're making those changes. So now I'm getting to the point that I'm getting up to the height in the template where I'm about as far out as I want it to be. And so I'll start making a change. So if every layer that I did before, the ring was a little bit bigger than the ring before it, well, now I want to reverse that. I want to go ahead and make a smaller ring. The coil size will still be the same diameter, but when I put it on top of it, I'm going to set it kind of just inside the circle. So when I do this, I'm kind of leaning it in here. And so now you can see as it leans in, it's already starting to take that shape. But I have to really make that happen. I have to force that to happen. This is a tricky one because I'm changing direction. And so as I'm going along and smoothing in, it's not going super quickly because I am doing that change, and there's like this big gap right there. It's like a big change. So I might spend more time on certain areas. Okay. Starting to come together, but again, this one level is the trickiest of them so far. So I'm really going to spend some time. I don't want to have there be a big ridge right there. I want it as smooth as everything else. And so just try things, keep moving it around, try it from different angles. You see I'm not just holding it in one place and hoping I get it. I'm picking it up, I'm moving it around. Try it from this side, try it with one hand, try it with the other hand. Whatever you can do to see if you can get to the point where it's starting to go the direction. Now I still got a point sticking out there and it's really bothering me, so I'm going to see if I can pinch that down a little bit instead of just smudging the clay. So I'm doing a little bit of pinching, taking that little sharp spot out, and now I'm seeing if I can pull it in a little bit more. But overall, this is one of these projects that you're really paying attention to what the clay is doing, and sometimes you'll do a coil and it just absolutely fails you. and you end up having to take that one layer off and do the layer again, and that's okay. As you're learning something new, things happen like that. If you knew how to do it perfectly, we probably wouldn't need to spend the time working on making one. So it's a chance to learn. So do some things, make some mistakes, have some things that totally fail, and keep on. What I'm going to do here is you can see me continue to go in, and that goes along with the design that I wanted. I wanted to get really skinny toward the top, and so one nice thing about the narrow or the skinny areas is I don't need to use much clay to get it done, so I'm not rolling out as many coils, so it's faster that way. And as I continue to smear them together, we see that form that I originally had, that it was going out slightly, getting to the point that it was out at its farthest point, and then it comes in a little bit more sharply. It is doing that to a certain extent. Now I'm trying some things. I'm trying out the card. I'm taking that white card that you guys have, let's say a little gift card. I'm seeing what happens if I use that, and so I'm doing some smoothing with it to see if that helped, and it did help a little bit, so I'm happy with that. Try out some more pinching. That one ridge that sticks out too much, it's really bothering me. If I can't make it work one way, try something else. So I tried the pinching, that helped a little bit. It's getting closer. I still see that there's areas that I'm not quite there, but enough that I can keep on. So as you're going up, it should be pretty level as you go. If you ever have some low spots, try to fill those in as you go so you can get it back to being on level. Sometimes you might have to have a little area of the coil that's a bit thicker than the rest just so you can get it to level out. And then, of course, continue to smooth it out. Now, as I'm getting up to the top here, I feel like I'm getting the form down, but it's pretty sloppy. So I'm trying some things like I was rolling it on the table. That really helped a lot to get some of the basic flat areas flatter. Now, as I start going up for the neck of this vase, I find out that it's a bit tricky because the coils are so thick that I made that it's very hard to make it that thin. So what I should probably do is do thinner coils. I'm having a heck of a time with this thicker one, and I have to keep shaping and try to get it smaller. I use my finger inside of it to keep smushing it in while still keeping an opening. And so I'd recommend changing the coil size when you get up there to the top so that you're able to more effectively do what you need to do. You can see that I did the neck separately first, try to get the basic shape down before I do it. That does work sometimes, or you could build it one at a time, working your way up like that. I went for all of it at once, and then it's kind of a pain. You can do it. You can put several of them together at once like I did there, just kind of one long spirally coil going up like a spring. Now I hope you notice that my form is getting way off, getting a little lopsided, and so I'm going to see if I can bring that back. Look at that major lopsidedness there. Don't sweat it if you have that along the process, but also don't be happy with it as like an end product. I definitely want to fix that. Right now I'm doing the lip, which is the top of my vase. I have the neck, which is generally going to be a cylinder going up, and then I'm going to let it get wider up at the top. And with this, continue to use my hands. It's my major tool, but in some of these areas I'm trying out some different things. I'm seeing what this little plastic tool does for me. And who knows, I've said this before, that you may find that you have some things just being inventive around the home. You see what are some different things that could help me in doing the thing I'm trying to do. And so, take a look at it and see. I found this area to be a bit tricky because I was making a big change going from straight up to going out, and so that even though it's one little area, it's a very important area. That top is a very important area. Now as I do this, I see that I have not really hit exactly what I was shooting for, so now I need to make a decision of, is that really going to bother me, that it's way off, or is it alright? It's not exactly what I was drawing it out, but I still like the new form that was created. And so make that decision, and you're the one calling the shots here when it comes down to what it is you're making. And if I say, actually I like the new changes I made, then great, then run with them. If you say, nah, I'm not happy with how this compares with this, then you need to do something about it, so keep at it. So right now I'm pretty happy with it, but I just need to get rid of all the lumps. It is lumpy as can be. Some of the lower clay has dried quite a bit, so it's becoming almost leather hard, and so I'm trying something where I'm tapping at it. I'm doing a thing called paddling, and I'm just taking that stick, one of the two sticks you have with your rolling pin, and we're going to use that later for slab building, but I'm basically just kind of like tapping at it And a good thing to do is just to see what it does. And so if your clay is super soft, it's a really bad idea. If your clay is already holding its form quite well, feel free to try it out. You know, tap, tap, tap. And if nothing is changing, try a little bit harder. Well, that looks kind of crazy in fast motion. But I'm actually hitting it a lot of times. Wow, that is crazy stuff. I'm like a hummingbird. So now, as I keep going around, tapping, 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 going all the way around, that's what it looks like more like. So I just keep tapping, tapping. Now, I have some problems. If I look in here, the edges of my stick are making all these little gouge marks. So basically, it's making it worse. So be aware of what your stick is doing if you're doing this. I'm trying out, hey, what if I did the rolling pin? That doesn't have sharp edges, that has round edges. And so I'm trying that out in this little shoulder area and seeing if that helps. And I might just find out that tapping like this and doing this paddling really isn't helping at all, then don't do it. But if you try it out and you see what it's doing and you like what it's doing, then go ahead. I always keep my hand behind it when I'm paddling, so that way it can't fall out of your hands. Also, you know, when I was dealing with the neck part there, if I would tap it too hard, the thing would just fall off. Now, I'm looking at it and it's like I've created some damage in that shoulder area by doing all that paddling and stretching and all these different things. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to heal that area up. So get a little bit of water involved if it's not moving on its own. If when I try to move clay from one spot to another it's gotten too dry, add just a touch of water or a touch of slip. Again, you add too much of it and then it's annoying because you can't pull the clay across. So you want to get that just that right amount. So here I am. The form is going a lot better. I'm going to take a sponge. You can wet your sponge however. I was showing you with the spray bottle. I'll show you. I'm not filling my sponge with water. It's a damp sponge. There's definitely water in it. But if I squeezed it, no water's coming out. It's just got enough water in there that's great for dealing with some of these surfaces. And so I use it to kind of like, you could almost think like polishing it up. What I'm trying to do is take out some of the little lumps. Now in the big areas, like that area right underneath the rim, there's this big lumpy area and I could not get it to flatten out. And so I took the scoring tool, the little comb, I basically just gouged it out and I just roughed it up really bad, loosened up the clay, so then when I went at it with my fingers it was much easier to move around and it worked pretty well. Here again I'm trying out the card to see if that's beneficial. I can bend it in my hand so it has a little bit of a curve when I do it. You really don't know what's going to work for you until you try it out. And so sometimes you try out doing something, you're like, okay, I see that this is doing, but I'm not very good at it. Well, keep at it, you might get better. Or you might see what it's doing and find out this is actually making it worse, and then stop that, okay? So I decided that one area up the top was really weak and it had some bad spots. So I'm adding a little bit extra clay to the outside. Make sure that they're going to be joined together quite well. Don't just put dry or wet clay on top of dry clay and hope it stays. You really want to make sure they were working with a little bit of slip and scoring, making sure that it's ready to accept a new clay. So I've made the top stronger. I was really not happy with how weak it was, but I really didn't like the look of it. And that's a big part of this. You need to keep turning it around and looking at it and telling yourself, not good enough. What can you do to make it better? So hands are a great tool, but you see I'm trying different things. I'm using my paddling tool, I'm using my card, using plastic tools, and again, anything else you have. Here I'm putting the foot on. I decided for this foot it's going to be a foot that's like slightly larger than the rest of the vase itself, and so that gives it the look that I had in my sketch where it comes out a little bit at the bottom, but it's actually hollowed right there so that the foot is not solid, basically. So it's just a big donut kind of shape. You can see me spin it around there. I tell you, having something to set it on and spin it around is kind of nice, so you can quickly move it around. I would encourage you to do that, and it keeps you from getting it stuck. At some point, get your initials on there and your class code, and then give it one final look over and see if there's anything else you want to fix. One last chance to do it, and when you're all done, congratulations.